Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on WhoKnewPodcast.com. You can leave comments there, or email us at WhoKnewPodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at WhoKnewPodcast, and find us on Facebook. Today's episode is Season 6, the entire Season 6. The Season 6 overview. It's 13 episodes long. It stars the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, and we have our companions, Amy, played by Karen Gillan, Rory, played by Arthur Darvill, and River, played by Alex Kingston. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves.
Hello, this is Auburn.
Hi, this is Kelsey.
Hi, this is Frank.
Hello, I'm Josh.
Hi, I'm Heather.
Hi, this is Brian.
Season 6 ran from April 2011 to October 2011, but was broken up into two halves. The spring half goes from The Impossible Astronaut or The Christmas Carol, depending on who you ask, to A Good Man Goes to War, which ended in June 2011. And then the autumn half goes from Let's Kill Hitler in August 2011 to The Wedding of River Song for the end being October 2011.
I did not like them splitting it up.
It felt like a false start and a false end.
Right, that's a good way to put it. I'm thinking because of that, because they had it split, they had almost two different story arcs that they're trying to follow throughout the season. The one about the Doctor and dying at Lake Silencio, and that was the whole thing. And then the idea of trying to figure out with River and bringing her story into it as a halfway mark. So it just seemed really odd, and maybe I'm going a little bit too much into the whole season, but it seemed very disjointed between the episodes. It's a balance of between standalone episodes and the whole story arc. And starting off the way they did with going, okay, this is the point in time the Doctor has to die, that set up a great arc, but some of the episodes just don't feel like they fit into that storyline. You know, they don't have the same emotional weight per character.
Per capita. Sorry.
I kind of get the feeling that this was a lot of the stuff Moffat was like waiting to do for years, and it was almost like a corked bottle where it just came shooting out in every direction, all of his thoughts.
That's a very interesting way of describing this season, Josh.
It's kind of like
Very Stephen Moffat.
And I think my nickname for this season is Style Over Substance. And I remember, Alburn, you mentioned that this is sort of a dark spot for you, Season 6. And I was like, yeah, same here. This DVD spine is barely cracked when I was watching this for the podcast. So I was like, really, my favorite episode in this season is The Doctor's Wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the top ones for me.
I think, Eugene, part of the issue that like I had personally was I believe that this was when I started watching almost real time. So that 2-part split of the season, not only did it kind of break the momentum of watching it on a regular basis, but it was like the beginning of at least me acquiring more digital media.
Yes.
So I attempted to purchase this like on the iTunes store.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that break in the seasons like kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, I think, because I bought one part thinking I was going to be able to download the next parts when they came out, and then they wanted like another $20 or whatever it was. So do you all have insight onto why they split this?
Was it for $20?
But was that decision made for that to be able to market it as two separate products, or
That's what
was
the BBC did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a different perspective than you guys on this, because I don't think I was watching the show live. If I was, then I really don't remember a large gap in the middle. So I don't think I did. So this season, that break does not affect my view of this season at all. But that being said, I still understand what you were saying, Eugene, about the false start and the false ending, because I'm looking at the list of episodes now, and I'm like, what the heck do any of these have to do with anything else? Like, what is going on here?
Find the connection.
Really? I never It's been a long time since I considered these episodes in an order, in a group. I know that we do this podcast, in order. However, usually by the time we get to the next episode, I've pretty much just wiped the slate clean. So, but man, this is bizarre. April 2011 to October 2011?
Yeah, but the break was in June.
It takes that long from the Impossible Astronaut for them to finally resolve all that? Bananas.
Something that came up during, I think it was Let's Kill Hitler. Alburn, you brought up something that I think you said, this is what, these are some ideas that are good. They're better than what I think we originally planned. And then I think that's why they took that break. They kind of started to get these ideas of how to end the season, and then maybe they took that break to kind of retrofit the rest of the season. And this is just my opinion, listening to our episodes in preparation for this episode. It kind of makes sense. Like there's 2 different seasons. You could market them as 2 different seasons.
Yeah, you've got Night Terrors and the God Complex in the second half.
Yeah.
So you're telling me they paused to come up with those ideas? Those are the ideas they paused for? That's crazy. Oh.
Well, I think it was to pause to make the Wedding of River Song work better with everything else. Something that I think helped with the break in the season is that there are a lot of prequels, and I mentioned them while we were doing these episodes, but I did a list, so I kind of want to tell you about them again to let you know how many there are. So there's one that takes place in between The Christmas Carol and The Impossible Astronaut, and that one is my favorite. It's called Space and Time, and these were done for the Red Nose Day for charity, for the charity Comic Relief. And the first one, Space, is with Amy and getting the Doctor's attention while he's fixing the TARDIS, and Rory's helping him. Amy's wearing a skirt, so Rory can see up her skirt because of the clear TARDIS floor, and that causes Rory to drop a coupling, and the TARDIS shakes, and there's the lights go out, and then the TARDIS materializes in itself. And so there's a sort of anomaly going on. The way that the Doctor figures out how to fix this space loop is that he figures out that it is a space loop because Amy comes through the TARDIS doors. So there's 2 Amys in the same space. And then it picks up with the second one called Time. Just a few moments after that, Amy from the few moments in the future that just entered knows what to say and do because she's repeating what she just heard herself say. So the Doctor sends the current Amy into the TARDIS to maintain the timeline. And then the 2 Amys kind of flirt with each other, and the Doctor says, "This is how it all ends. Pond flirting with herself. True love at last." Oh, sorry, Rory. I found that very funny. And soon after she leaves, a new Amy and Rory come into the TARDIS again. So there's 2 sets of things going on. It's very funny, and the way they reset it is the Doctor finally comes in and tells the current Doctor what to do, and he says the wibbly lever, and that's how they normalize things. And then the TARDIS inside the TARDIS console gets dematerializes, and we get the line that the Doctor says, "Pond, put some trousers on." So that one was, it's kind of like, what was the one we did? Time Crash. It's kind of like that. It's just very fun, and it's on the DVD.
Well, for Red Nose Day also?
But it was done for charity. I think it was for children in need, not for Comic Relief.
Gotcha.
So those 2 I really enjoyed. You can find them on YouTube, and they are on the DVD there as an extra. And then into our actual episodes, some of them have prequels, like The Impossible Astronaut has a prequel where Nixon receives a phone call from the little girl, and he tries to talk to her but can't. And then The Curse of the Black Spot, there's shots of the pirate ship before the Doctor, Amy, and Rory show up. And then A Good Man Goes to War, Dorium is talking to some headless monks right before those events happen with Demon's Run. And then Let's Kill Hitler, Amy calls the Doctor and leaves a message just wondering if he's been able to find Melody, I think. And I think the first time, this was done in season 2, all the way back with Rose and the 10th Doctor, I think every episode in that season had a little mini episode accompanying it.
Hello.
And then we get the next batch of mini episodes or prequels, which is Night and the Doctor. And these take place after the God Complex and before closing time. And they all revolve around the theme of what does the Doctor do while the companions are asleep. So the first one is Bad Night, where Amy answers the phone on the TARDIS and the Doctor comes in with his top hat and tails with a goldfish, and there's a fly buzzing around. Amy swats the fly with a newspaper, and it turns out that she's just killed a warrior chief.
Oh, no.
The Doctor has the wrong goldfish because a British queen has turned into a fish, and goes back to the party with River, and it's very similar to the Let's Kill Hitler prequel. And then this one is entitled Good Night. The Doctor has a euphonium and is in his white smoking jacket. Amy wants to talk to the Doctor about what's wrong. I think she's at this point sensing that there's something the Doctor is hiding. And the Doctor is avoiding this, and he tells her that all the things he's done that night, like this is not exactly it, but this is kind of the gist of it. He's prevented wars, he's saved races, and he's like baked a cake in the span of a night. And Amy says, "We're such small parts of your life," and that's where that one sort of ends.
Aww.
And yeah, it's kind of nice. It's kind of dealing with a tough question, but surrounded by all this comedy. The next one is called First Night. This one, it's a dark and stormy night in Stormcage Prison as the Doctor, still in his white smoking jacket, comes to get River out, tells her to get dressed, and then tells her to write everything in her diary. And she picks up the TARDIS diary and says, "Oh, this is a diary?" So River goes to get dressed because there's a wardrobe in the TARDIS. And then as she leaves, another River comes into from the TARDIS doors, and she's just come back from a laser gunfight and faints. So that's where that one ends. The next one, Last Night, picks up where this one ends, and River is on the floor and the Doctor is giving her mouth to mouth, and she's faking it, so she ends up kissing the Doctor. She sees the dress and wonders who else is in the TARDIS, so she runs off to find this other woman, not knowing that she's the other woman in the TARDIS. And there are more than one River in this current timeline. And there's a reference to Silence in the Library where River is getting dressed to go to the Singing Towers of Beryllium. And then the last one in this series is called Up All Night, which is a direct prequel to Closing Time. This one is the one that is not connected thematically to the rest of these ones that are lumped together. Up All Night involves Craig, Sophie, and Alfie. Craig is expressing his fears of being left alone with Alfie, while Sophie is gonna leave, and that's what happens, and then we lead into what happens in Closing Time.
First Night and Last Night, though, that's the one that has two doctors, right? Which one is the one where the two doctors are discussing this is your first date, this is your last date? Because doesn't the Doctor come in?
And it says with the wrong TARDIS?
Yeah, and like River's off running trying to find the other woman who's River. That's when you find out, that's when the younger Doctor says to the older Doctor, "This is the last night, isn't it? You're going to Beryllium." And he says, "Yeah." So you kind of get the impression that it's the first Doctor is the first date with River, because he says start writing in the diary. And then the last one is he's going to take her to Beryllium and give her the Sonic. And they both realize what that means.
How would she know what that means?
She doesn't. She's not in the room.
The Doctor's talking to himself, literally.
Oh.
Two different timelines.
One River's.
Oh, when you right, I got you.
Yeah.
It's very, that's why it's hard to take notes on these things, because they're short, but a lot goes on, and there's multiple people and different timelines crossing over each other.
But they work really well when you watch them.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
And the last one it's a prequel to The Wedding of River Song. It takes place in Area 52, which is that pyramid where they have all the silence captured. And then it's a reveal that River Song has an eye patch. And that one's really short. So yeah, I recommend out of all of these, the one Space and Time. I just enjoy that sort of time loop humor. Like, we have to do this because you're seeing me do it, so I have to do it.
And for me, it's First Night, Last Night. That's such an emotional wallop.
I think the thing that I don't like about that is that isn't it a different Doctor that does go to the Beryllium with her?
Not they changed it yet, and shush. there is a line in the Husbands of River song to explain that. Because she
Okay.
said, you kept talking about taking me to Beryllium and then you would cancel at the last
Right.
second.
And see, now that you mentioned that, I think that's why I have a little bit of a problem with that. Because again, it's Moffat like retconning his own ideas.
Yeah.
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 He should write soap operas. There's no consequences for retconning your stuff on soap operas. In fact, you are expected to.
There's one
Okay.
more. Sorry, there's one more. I forgot about this one because it's a prequel to the Christmas episode. It takes place after the Wedding of River Song and before the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. The Doctor gets his fez from the Big Bang, like all the way from the Big Bang episode. He accidentally hits a lever on the console, and then the fez vanishes, and Albert Einstein appears with the fez on his head. Einstein has been working on his own time machine and thought that a mysterious liquid is the answer. It turns Einstein into an ood, so the Albert ood repeats death is the only answer. And then a vortex suddenly appears and manages to turn the Albert ood back into Einstein with his signature crazy hair. So the Doctor says, "It looks good, you should keep it." Meaning the hair.
Was it his hair was all neat in the beginning of that thing?
It was very like flat.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember
I don't think
seeing
I've
that
ever
one.
seen that one.
That one is called Death is the Only Answer.
Wow.
I'm glad they attached the Christmas specials to a DVD, but that's not part of the season in my mind either. It's like, no, that was a special between seasons. I'm glad they attached it to that rather than having a separate disc that you had to buy if you wanted it.
I think
Yeah.
they do that in the future.
I know that when you used to be able to get these on Amazon,
Yeah.
the Christmas specials were separate things on Amazon,
Yeah.
which leads me to believe that they were also separate in the store. Are they only doing New Year's these days?
If
That they shifted. I don't know.
They call it now the holiday special because people are still annoyed that it's not on Christmas.
Okay, so season 6 starts off with the Impossible Astronaut, and that's the one where the Doctor gets shot at Lake Silencio, and his regeneration doesn't happen, and then we figure out, or we then encounter the new Doctor, or a younger Doctor, and then the companions, along with River, are not telling the Doctor what happened.
I like anything that plays up the idea of this character, how he's lived all these lives and he lives in another wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey way. And like you were saying, Eugene, the time loop jokes and all that. Anything that involves that doesn't create an actual conflict in logic, I really enjoy.
And I think that's why I wanted to mention those prequels or mini episodes, because these are things that happen, while we're not with our regular scheduled programming. So that kind of fills in some of those gaps.
Yeah.
Like,
And it helps you remember there's so much more going on in the Doctor's
Yeah.
life than just what we get to see.
mhm. And I like the Impossible Astronaut as a season opener. It really kept me wanting to, I was excited to see what else happens. But what I don't like about it is that the Doctor and the companions are at the end of the episode withholding information from each other. And I don't feel that is great.
I don't mind that because River always withholds information.
And I get it. It works for the episode, but then this is the beginning of what then happens later. So I want to point that out now.
It creates a Three's Company kind of thing. It's like, if you guys would have just talked at the beginning, all of this would have been solved.
Yes, well,
The beginning of this season or the series, I think it had a lot of promise with those first 2 episodes.
Yes.
Like you said, just visually, the astronaut and then the silence is such a great villain for Doctor Who. Like the whole idea of forgetting about them, and they're just right art direction and the suits, and even in Impossible Astronaut, when you see it off in the distance, like it's a really great villain, really great open to a season that looked like it had a lot of potential.
and it was in America.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
For me, the Impossible Astronaut and even Day of the Moon is just like, for me, how you start a new season. Like at the start of a new season, we get a new villain that we've never heard of before. And
Or have we? We just forgot. Cool. I'm glad you mentioned the second part or the second episode, Day of the Moon. So those are the first two: Impossible Astronaut, Day of the Moon.
I wanted to say I really like these episodes. I agree with what Kelsey was saying, but it doesn't pay off, and that's what hurts these episodes when you
That's a
rewatch it.
And that's why I'm pointing these things out now so that we can see later on.
Yeah.
But I think it's like I really liked it, but watching it again, you just get, because the ending just doesn't pay off.
Right, but you have to assume that we didn't know what the payoff was yet.
No, I agree.
Therefore,
I liked them. I thought they were a great way to start. I agreed with everything you guys were saying. It gave a lot of great mysteries that you're expecting to be paid off well and to be answered at the end of this.
Cool. So the third episode is The Curse of the Black Spot, and that's the one with the ship stranded, and there are siren-like creatures that come out to get the people who have been cut, I think, and they have the black mark on their hands.
Anybody injured?
Yes, they get the black spot from being cut.
Yeah.
Because it was was it that they got the black spot because they were injured in some way or unhealthy, someone was sick or whatever.
I like this episode, but not in a way that matters. Does that?
Yeah, it's a fun episode, but it's odd to fit it here right after they had that talk about should we tell the doctor? Should we not tell the doctor? He's going to be dying. What are we going to do? And that isn't at all in this episode. It's a standalone. And I think if you pull some of these out and watch them, not knowing the story arc that they've started in the last episode, it's better because you're thinking, it's just a random episode.
It's referenced, but it's not part of the story. I think it's almost like the show itself was starting to become more serialized, even more so. But they still needed to do Monster of the Week or bottle shows. So then it was basically like, okay, where do we drop these bottle shows amongst the season and then just sort of put in some sort of through line, like you were just saying.
Right.
I could totally see Amy and Rory being like, uh-oh, the doctor's gonna die. We need to distract him. Quick, pirates! I don't know. Just seems like something they would do.
But it didn't seem like that was the acting choice.
Yeah.
Because of this overarching mystery of this series being what it was, you couldn't do that. There was no way to subtly, except for maybe when the doctor would look at the scan of the TV in his TARDIS, and it would say something because the mystery was is Amy pregnant or not? Or when am I gonna die? That was the mystery.
That's my problem with this season, is that there's two mysteries. So every time something comes up, you're like, which one is this tracking on? Which timeline am I, doing my conspiracy theory board? Which string does this one follow?
Yeah, and the overarching, what I'm so upset about season 6 is that the overarching mystery ruined all of the other episodes for me. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't expect you guys to agree with that, but does that make sense that it would be it was a distraction?
Yeah, I get it, Kelsey.
All of them. When is the doctor going to die? Are they going to tell him that he's going to die? Is Amy pregnant? Is Amy even with them? Is she it was too much. And so each episode I wasn't looking at each episode as a fun adventure. It was okay, what am I going to learn about the overarching mystery? Oh, I learned nothing. That's a bummer.
When you mentioned that so much of the mystery was tied into these TARDIS monitors, it just made me realize how much of it was seeing the date, Lake Silencio, whatever the date was, and seeing the Amy scan of pregnancy. And you're right, that is boring. Whereas Bad Wolf and The Crack, it was always hidden somewhere that was part of the story. So it's not.
Or you didn't notice, and you didn't need to notice. It did not take away from the enjoyment of the episode at all.
Yeah.
And then later on, it was wait, there was a vote for Saxon episode in Torchwood? Those are just fun little Easter eggs. Yeah. These were plot points.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. If they hadn't thrown these references in shoehorn style or however, would we then have been whoa, I totally forgot this mystery was even a mystery? They completely abandoned it. And I just feel like they kind of couldn't have done anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say they didn't know what they wanted to be, but I think they did. They were just trying to do two separate things at the same time, sort of. Again, like what always happens to me when I rewatch this show is once I already know what's gonna happen, I just kind of sit back and take it in. So the episodes hit me differently, but this show has become such a emotional connection with people that and because they wait 6 months between half a season, like we're looking for something, and if we don't get it, we only have 40 minutes to find out. We're going to get what we've been waiting for. And when we don't, I think we feel what you're talking about. So
we're bringing out the torches and the pitchforks.
It doesn't bother me the way it bothers you, but I do agree with you. It doesn't really work the way they did it. And I feel like if they could have sewn it together a little better. I think you're right. It's just like, well, okay, where can we plop in these things in this episode? Okay, next one. Okay, where can we plop these in here? And
you can't do a serialized storytelling when you have a 4-month break. You know, the audience's expectations and anticipations and just imaginings. You know, you spend 4 months going, what's going to happen? What's going to, it's like, because they did say it. They go, the beginning of next season is let's kill Hitler. So we spent 4 months, maybe even 5, going, oh my God, what's Let's Kill Hitler about? Whoa. And then we saw
not about Hitler.
Not about Hitler.
Not about Hitler. No.
So it's the beginning of, for me, this season was the beginning of, this is really a turn in Doctor Who, where it's less fun. And while the season was airing, and right after the season finished, it was more, for me, it was a bit of a worry. It was a bit of an anxiousness going, oh, is this how it's going to continue? Or is this just an aberration and we're going to go back to what it was before? And since then, we found out that it's not going back to what it was before. It's the way they do things going forward. So I think that's why my reaction to season 6 is probably a little harsher than it should be, because it is the moment where I go, the show has changed and I don't know, it's not what it was, and I liked what it was more.
I think also too, again, it's funny. I agree with everything everyone's saying. I still like it. Like this season doesn't bother me at all, especially the more I watch it. I do remember going at the end of that episode, going like, "Well, what the frig about Hitler?" But I will say this: I hate the titles of every episode.
Yes, and
I found them to be so misleading as a viewer. Now I watched this after it aired, so I watched it when it was on Netflix or whatever it was on. But I recall thinking back, like that didn't have anything to do with the title, and always being disappointed because I had expectations. But you
dinosaurs on a spaceship. I wanted to throw my remote through the TV. I was so mad.
Yep.
Totally. So if all of my disappointments with almost every Doctor Who episode have always been about what I expected the episode to be before I started watching it.
I defy you to know immediately the difference between day, night, time, dawn, twilight of the Doctor. It's just
This is the titles.
Yeah, they're titles of episodes, and it just goes on because it's like Moffat is like such a fanboy. He just loves it's resurrection of the Daleks, it's regeneration of the Daleks. Oh, isn't that clever? And it's like, well, no, not when you do it for every other episode of a season.
Yeah.
I think one-upsmanship is the overall problem. They're always like, how do we top what we did before? And it's like, I'm sorry, what's the name of the episode with David Tennant and his entire crew reuniting and flying the TARDIS together?
Oh, The Journey's End.
Yeah, Journey's End.
That was the greatest / worst thing they ever did.
Because you can't top it.
There's no topping that ever.
I know.
And then
Frank and I also recently watched a review of season 6, and he said that season 6 for people in Britain felt that the show was beginning to get very Americanized.
Yeah.
And they didn't like it.
We didn't like it either.
We didn't like it either.
We didn't like it.
We came to this show because it was not the American garbage we were already watching.
Right. Yeah. So it and because you got to think about it, season 6 would be the perfect time for that to start happening because it really exploded with season 5 in America. It had been building with Tenet, then season 5 hit, it exploded. And so now they're going to be like, there's 300 million people we can get money out of.
Oh.
More of them, yeah.
Don't cater to us.
Yeah, no. Whoever thought that was a good idea.
Well, that's why they wanted to sell the season as 2 parts. All this new American money coming into it.
No, it's all about capitalists.
Yeah.
Damn, do we literally ruin everything? Like
even our own country? What I didn't like about the third episode in this season being The Curse of the Black Spot is that Day of the Moon ends with this girl regenerating in the city by herself. And I think the doctor mentioned something about, should we go find her or should we go on an adventure? I'm like, no, go find her. That is what my understanding of who these characters are and their motivations. They would want to find this girl trapped inside this astronaut costume this whole time. And instead they go to Pirates of the Caribbean. And I'm like, why are we doing this? So this is another thing that I feel is off with this season, is the placement of episodes.
Yes.
And especially closing time being the second to last before our last episode. I'm like, what?
Yes, I think you just summed up. That's probably why I don't like the third episode, is because it's not what you just said. Yep.
So then the fourth episode is The Doctor's Wife, which is my favorite in this season. And that's when the TARDIS gets a human or a humanoid body, and the Doctor has to figure out how to get the TARDIS console, the energy, back inside the physical police box instead of this woman. And then Amy and Rory are separated by House, which is the planetoid that they're on, and then wackiness ensues.
I think this is a lot of people's favorite episode. I know it ranks on the top of a lot of Doctor Who episode lists in general, just because the writing is fantastic from Neil Gaiman, and our characterizations, and what's a very small theater, single space. It's not as epic as some of our other episodes. This stands out among Doctor Who episodes of all seasons.
But in its own way, it does have a sort of, maybe not the word epic, but big quality to it. We see more of the TARDIS than we ever see before. We see the old console room. We see the TARDIS flying through the bubble universe, and it's just because, to me, the reason why I bring that up is because for me, Curse of the Black Spot, I don't like because it's claustrophobic. It's too small for a pirate ship episode. It really seems to me like the stage wall is a foot beyond the railing. This one seems very big, and that they are on another planet picking out pieces of junk TARDIS to make a TARDIS. It just, the look of it really suits the story. But then again, I consider this episode perfect. So
I only have one criticism for this episode, and it's not even important.
Cut her mic.
It's a visual thing. It's not even a story thing. I just wish it weren't so dark.
Yeah, I see that.
I don't know why that bothers me, because usually visual things, that's more of Eugene's territory. But when I think about this episode, I just think I think dark, dingy, grimy.
Yeah.
But that's a small complaint in the spectrum of this episode.
Totally makes sense.
Wow, Brian, that makes me feel good to hear you say that. You were trying to cut my mic. No, but I do. I love the episode. There's nothing wrong with the storytelling or the writing or the acting. It's just a visual thing that I remember it as such a dark episode, like every week of Game of Thrones ever.
I'm glad you mentioned the acting, because I felt that the casting of Saran Jones was perfect. Like they got the person to embody what the TARDIS is in Idris, and the chemistry between her and Matt Smith was amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Like who would have thought that the TARDIS would act like that?
Right.
Who thought that? Because that was genius. It was like, she was so easy to love.
Yeah. And I think that's why I like Neil Gaiman's stuff, is that, reading his graphic novels and things, he does this a lot. And so I was so happy that he was able to do this within Doctor Who.
Can you imagine if she was like Jessica Rabbit or like... I don't know. She could have been anyone.
Maybe that's why I enjoyed this episode so much, because it doesn't have that much connection to the rest of the season. So I can watch this on its own any day of the week that I want.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this was the biggest flip-flop I've had on an episode, because I remember really not liking it when I first saw it. And then on second viewing, I don't know if the second viewing was even for our podcast, liked it as much as you guys. And I think what it was I didn't catch, because Idris was so kooky. I felt like the TARDIS would be kooky. And then it wasn't until my last viewing that I caught the bit that it's because the TARDIS's energy, like her body can't handle it and her brain can't handle it, and that's why she's sort of like malfunctioning, especially at first. And I guess I didn't catch that the first time. I felt like they were sort of like turning the TARDIS into a comic relief, and I remember not liking that. And then that aha moment when I watched it the second time, being like, oh, it's because the TARDIS is so powerful that a mortal body can't contain this. Well, that's really great. And then it just flopped for me.
Because to me, that's the TARDIS. It's not because the body's breaking down. Which I'm
Well,
not saying you're bad.
No. But they actually say something in the episode at first where she's still getting used to the fact.
Yeah,
it was early, because as the episode goes along, when she starts breaking down, she's actually more cogent. Is that the right word? Cognizant.
Yes. Oh, okay. All right.
Things like that. Like
works.
it was just like when I originally saw it, that's what I thought was happening. Like, oh, I'm a person now. I don't know how to be a person. Isn't this funny? I have a drinking problem. You know, things like that. That's kind of how I took it originally. It was before I was as much of a Who fan, so like I kind of took some more things at face value. Again, well, where's Hitler in this episode?
Right.
I think that is one ding I would give to it, is the title, especially at the time, because I think we had known a little bit about River and some other things.
Right.
So we're like, oh, we'll get more of that. And it's totally not at all.
Yeah. Like I didn't, but again, like I agree with all of you. Like this is one of the best episodes.
So the next two episodes are two-parter, and they are The Rebel Flesh and The Almost People. And this is where there are doppelgangers, which are gangers, doing the mining of acid in a castle, and then the Doctor, Amy, and Rory stumble upon them, and then it turns out that the gangers have gained sentience, and then so the flesh is now some sort of tool for the world in this future world, and now the flesh is becoming sentient as well.
Like an avatar.
Yeah. Well, the gangers are not avatars anymore. They are individuals. And so that's where this story takes place. And there is a ganger doctor. And what does that mean for Amy?
Yeah, I thought this episode was a miss because of what it was trying to say. It's definitely production wanting to put in the gangers to tell us what's going on with Amy later on. That's the only reason this episode, but they have to understand what a ganger is, so we can get that shock value.
And my problem with that, I mean, I get why they did that, totally understand where you're coming from, but why did they take 2 episodes to do it?
Exactly.
Do it in one episode.
One episode.
So I think you're totally right that it could have just been one episode. It could have focused on just these gangers in this one location that got sentience, rather than trying to make it a bigger thing that's happened in other places over the use of it. Because they've said, oh, this happened in other places, this kind of quirkiness that they thought they had. And then going back at the end to try and talk to the people, trying to get their rights as beings, living beings, and not being put back into the flesh. And none of that paid out at the next thing, where it's like, oh, we'll just destroy this Amy because she's a nobody. She's just an avatar. She's just, a piece of flesh. It's not paid off well.
Amy's not accepting the ganger doctor as the doctor.
Right.
And so the doctor and the ganger doctor switched to make Amy see what was going on. And I remember us talking about how that was Amy's story arc in this episode. Did we ever mention the irony that entire time that was happening, Amy was a ganger?
I don't think so.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I think literally I picked it up, and it was like the doctor knew. The doctor knew at that point that she was a ganger. So I think
she wasn't a sentient ganger.
Right. Yeah. This was not a independent.
But it is ironic.
But it is the irony of the whole
Don't you
thing.
think?
Yeah. I have a question. Oh, only in Canada. So doesn't he end up being part of the bridging the gap to making the gangers safe in the end, like changing the technology as well? That whole episode was
that was
initiated
the in-story plot.
Right, but because of that then changed, so what the ganger that Amy wasn't the same flesh. So it was he kind of created that positive paradox.
He made it possible for them to create Amy ganger.
So he could kill the ganger Amy and not kill a being.
But that Amy
Yeah.
Ganger wasn't sentient.
That's why I know.
That's why he
but
could
if
kill
he,
it.
but if he didn't interject himself in that storyline, that he was somewhat personally responsible for that technology to grow, so that would be okay.
He kind of got the Ganger equivalent of seatbelts in every car.
Right. Exactly. What'd you say, Kels?
I'm with you. Like I'm
Yeah.
with you, Josh. That makes sense.
I remember that was a big point when we were actually watching the episode the other way. So
Which
okay,
is-
so I get it.
Which is
So-
why I don't like it. It's that the Doctor had taken away sentient beings' rights and made them not sentient beings anymore, so that
Well,
he
that's a
could
good
kill the
thing.
doppelganger. Amy.
Well,
No,
no,
but
he
they
didn't
became
take
sentient, not only here but in other places. They've had this,
Right,
thing
and then
That's
they
happen.
right.
fixed the technology so that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, they didn't take away
Which
from
is
the
really
So it's
sentient
sad.
like a
beings.
good thing. They didn't kill
They-
the sentient beings.
They just kept them
They
from ever
just
being
made
made
it.
again.
They just made it so that no more sentient beings would be created. It would
And
be
to me, I
more of
see
an
that-
avatar.
Right.
It'd be like you playing VR.
No, I get it.
And
I
you,
get
you
that.
created an avatar, and all of a sudden, like when you're not playing VR, your avatar is still having adventures because it's sentient. And then someone comes along and says, hey, this is happening. Let's make it so that doesn't happen anymore. You now haven't killed future sentient beings.
Have you
You've
not?
just made it so that they
But
aren't
those-
Have
created.
you
But-
not? You
But
might
you
have.
could take it, the devil's advocate of this is that now these people that are 200 years in the future are not going to exist because of that.
Genocide. You've sterilized a race of
Yes.
people.
Maybe
A
this
new-
whole episode was a pro-life episode then. Like you're killing embryos, you're keeping a baby from being born. Isn't that the same thing? That's what you're saying? Like,
No, you're
No,
not
no.
killing them. You're
No, no.
robbing them. You're robbing them of their existence.
They
Not
can't have
killing.
progeny.
A new life has happened.
Like birth control.
No,
Right,
a new
so
life
what's
has
wrong with
happened
that?
out of us. Wait. Listen, I'm going to tell you. A new life has happened out of a slave group. You've created slave labor as avatars. They now have their own life. You created life. You could have that. You're going, okay, but you can't procreate. You cannot have others of your
We don't
kind
know
here
that they
stopping
can't
them.
procreate
They
on their own.
stopped them from being themselves. They stopped them from doing this so they could have their slave labor back. That's how I saw it, and that's why it pisses me off. Now I can see
But we don't know if they can't procreate on their own.
they killed all the other ones.
No.
They killed all the this happened before and they just wiped them out. They killed them. This has only those two that are there, or one,
Right.
the two that are still alive, saying no, so they rent those two people, but they've
Did
stopped
they-
production on the other ones, going, we cannot let this life happen. We cannot have these things come to life. We cannot even give them the opportunity to continue and procreate on their own.
Well,
We need our
because
slave labor, so we're going to put this other thing in to stop it from happening. And the Doctor did that for the whole species that could have happened,
Well, the
so
thing
that
is
he could kill Amy.
All right. Well, the thing is the flesh is man-made, so it's basically like there still has to. It's not a race of beings that.
Why isn't it a
procreate
race of beings?
on- Let me
Because
let me
they
finish
stopped
my
it from
sentence. You
happening.
didn't let me
They
finish
stopped
my
it from
sentence.
happening.
Look. Are you gonna let me finish my sentence?
No!
All right. I'm done.
Go for it, go.
It was a race of beings that didn't have their own way of procreating without a man-made source. So take away the man. If man just went like, all right, we won't touch anything, it wouldn't even exist anymore. They still had to make the flesh. It was still man-made. Like
But you brought up the
pugs
question
and
of-
Persian cats.
But you brought up the question, we don't know if they can procreate
We
on their
don't.
own or not. We don't know
True.
that. We
Right,
didn't want to
I'm-
know that.
And life finds a way, Josh. I'm just saying. So
Right. No, I know. That's what I'm saying. But I'm only arguing the point that, like, this was a machine. They looked at the flesh as a machine that they needed for slave labor, and it was safe. Then they find out this thing happens, and they either still need the machine because industry is run on it, so they tweak it so that it doesn't become an abomination. It's still a machine.
All known me, I've interpreted and rationalized things constantly with Doctor Who to make it work for me. This one doesn't, because this instant has happened many times before, because they had already said this is still the early stages of it. So they did change it to say, no, these are going to just be non-living avatars. But it's happened before and they've been killing them a lot. And I could just say, sure, if what you said did happen, that they passed a law saying, no, you can't kill them anymore, how many died after that law? How many still
Well,
died?
it's-
I think a
how
lot.
many-
I mean, you look at, Revolution, where all the wars we've had after the war said no ceasefire, there's still skirmishes going on, and some people going, no, I'm not going to be responsible for the lives of all these people or give them any
I
benefits.
take that as
We're gonna wipe it out.
That incident was the domino, the first domino that was tipped. How many people were still lynched after emancipation?
It's a dumb, but I mean, you can even rationalize it that those that did happen while they were doing all this stuff, because it wasn't just instantaneous that they found a cure
Right.
for this.
Yeah.
Those may have been on their own planet and are thriving somewhere. The thing is, we do not know. They stopped it. They didn't, like Eugene was saying, they didn't tell us what this was. The only idea I think they had was, we need to show what a ganger is so we can kill Amy. And they go, oh my gosh, she was a ganger the whole time. Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't think they
Without
realized.
really saying what this story was. Eugene's right that they could have been such a good story if they either pared it down to just being this one instance, not going back to the world thing and just going, this is just weird fluke, or having explained what the other things, why they made it a two-part episode and why they felt like they had to make the Doctor alter it so that he could kill Amy, so that he could figure out what the original ones were so he can destroy it.
Oh, well, I just think the dissonance is that we spend these 2 episodes sympathizing, learning to sympathize with the flesh. The show is making us sympathize with the flesh, with the
Yes.
gangers, treat them as real people. And then the show turns around and kills a flesh because it's not a real person. That's the dissonance. The show is saying these are real people as equal as flesh, human flesh people. But then the show is also saying, no, they're not real people. They're just stuff we can throw away. And that's why that's why I have a problem with it, is because the show isn't going along with itself. And
Yes.
no matter what they say, it's the show, spending 2 episodes making me feel for them and then saying, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they failed to make a point to show. I mean, I know we're repeating myself a little bit here, where that Ganger Amy was a future technology that wasn't the same as that, but they didn't point that out. It was just shocking. I think overall, again, I don't think anybody's wrong in this conversation. I don't think they realized the better story they had while they were making this episode. All these things we're talking about right now, I think, came out of this episode being the way it was. And they had an agenda, they made their episode, and it created these other ideas that wasn't even on their menu.
Feel for the writers that they had to come up with a story to explain something, and in the process they were like, oh, we really like this story, we really have fallen in love with this world that we've created, so let's stretch it out. And
So Kelsey, to quote you, the writers got paid.
If you really, really want to watch this story as a great 2-episode thing, go watch Measure of a Man and the Offspring.
Yeah.
Was that from?
Measure of a Man is Data's on trial for being sentient.
Okay.
And then the Offspring is Data makes a daughter. Is she really his daughter?
Right.
Fascinating.
They're so good.
And I think I think it's funny. This is all falling into line with what we're talking about this season, where Moffat's just got too much stuff trying to shove it through like a sieve.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I really don't think he had a plan.
I don't think he had a plan. I think he had a crazy amount of ideas.
Yeah.
And then just is like, oh, I gotta get all these ideas out in this season. Devil's advocate, though. It's like
we're all devil's advocates. I like it.
I know. Kind of going back on what I've been saying about when I rewatch these episodes, I enjoy them so much more. As a result, I keep watching these episodes, even some on numerous times, not just twice, and I keep finding more stuff. So it's like it keeps on giving, even though it's not good the first time you watch it because you don't know, you can't figure all this stuff out. I get something new, like, oh, I didn't even realize that. Granted, if it was written better, I would have. But now I got something out of it, years later.
Sometimes very well written books, you won't see all the nuances the first time around.
I'm just calling out. There's a 2 sides to the coin of this.
Yes.
Of the way this season was written. The bad also yields some good in that regard.
As referenced earlier, there are some really amazing moments in these 2 episodes. And it's a shame that we can't sit here and talk about those for 20 minutes, but we are so pulled away and distracted by the other element that it detracts. But I will say, just because we are fans of the show and we still like the show, even though we have criticisms, that there was some good stuff in there. And it's too bad.
Sure.
It's too bad that they couldn't have really hit a home run with these two because
Yeah.
they were onto something. They were onto something bigger and more beautiful and eye-opening. And
I do want to respond to earlier Devil's Advocate Heather. When Amy was talking to the doctor, that was a good placement of the story arc. Just talking to the doctor, trying to tell him that he's going to die, and get the idea that maybe the doppelganger can do it. I think that was a good use of the story arc for the season, placed in an episode, not just to remind us, but to go, the way Amy said it, the way Karen played it, was this has always been on her mind. It's like, this is a way out that we could deal with this issue. Maybe use a ganger for it. So that I thought was really well placed in this episode.
you get 1 gold star.
I think the problem with this episode is that we're having a better discussion of what the episode is giving us.
Yes, this is more interesting.
And I think that's why this episode, it has the potential to be, these episodes have the potential to be good, but they're not going deeper in what we're discussing right now. Cool. The next episode, which is episode 7 in the season, is A Good Man Goes to War. This is where the Doctor gets his army together and he and Rory infiltrate Demon's Run to rescue Amy and her baby, Melody Pond. And this is where we find out who Madame Kavarian is, the lady with the eye patch.
Honestly, if there's one thing I remember the most about this season, it's Eye Patch Lady's face. But like not anything about her, what her deal is, or I'm just like, oh, that's Eye Patch Lady season, period. So who is Madame Kavarian? I still don't even know. Who is this lady? Was I paying attention? Did I remember? I think I just in one ear out the other.
Yep.
I think it's another case of a really interesting storyline, like that they just glanced over. That for 9 months they've had this Stockholm syndrome relationship where Madam what's her name was taking care of Amy and almost like making sure she was healthy at the same time holding her captive. Like that is an interesting story there. Would have liked to have seen like what they call like the Rashomon episode where we see some of the past season's adventures from that point of view, like where it would, like while this was happening there, Amy was locked away, being pregnant.
But Amy wasn't there mentally, from what we could see. If everything's right with the doppelganger, she was on board the TARDIS mentally.
Right.
Physically, she wasn't. So her point of view was only when she opened her eyes and saw the,
Right. But then they did build a relationship for the end of the pregnancy, once they killed the ganger. Because when we check in with them, they have a relationship already. So to see, like when later on when what's her name, Madam what?
Kavarian.
Madame Kavarian is sort of like trying to beg Amy to save her life. Like, remember who I am? I took care of you. Like, where that would have been interesting to see where that even came from. Because all we saw was this.
Mother Gothel.
Was this? Yeah, exactly. We should have seen more of that. Like, all we saw was the evil villain. So, like, why would you save the evil villain?
Right.
So I know I don't like when shows talk down to the audience, but this season gives the audience a lot of credit to figure stuff out.
Yeah, there's a balance that this season does not tread on the balance of the tight wire. And I think, revisiting this, I think I was the one that disliked this episode the most amongst all of us on this revisit. This is another one that I think could have been a two-parter in my mind.
Wait, which one are we talking about?
A Good Man Goes to War instead of having the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People as the two-parter. Right. This one or The Wedding of River Song could have been the two-parter for the season for me.
This is the one with the headless monks.
Yeah, the church being the silence, or the silence
and they're on
the
base most of the time.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. See,
the doctor
I
makes
needed
an
more.
army.
I needed more physical description because even just the plot description was nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing was there.
Right, because I like this episode because we get introduced on some really great characters that come back later. Madame Vastra, her partner Jenny, Strax,
And I agree that these are great characters, but I think what waters this down for me is that we've seen them before, these actors playing different characters but the same species, so it adds to that confusion.
Oh, that's a good point. 2 of them. I didn't think of 2 of them.
Yeah.
Right.
The next one we do see is Let's Kill Hitler. And that is River's origin.
And see, that's why I think the placement of episodes in season 6 is very odd, because A Good Man Goes to War ties in more with the Wedding of River Song than it does with anything that comes in between those 2 episodes in this season. And it's just weird that we have A Good Man Goes to War being the break of the spring half, the first half, and then it has its resolution at the end of the second half. It's like, why are you stretching this out?
Yeah, tie the 2 stories together.
Yeah.
And don't call it Let's Kill Hitler Part 1 and Part 2.
This is also the episode where we get the origin of River's name, some answers, or I don't know if anyone was really questioning that.
Was it ever a question?
No, but
it was. Why did she change it?
Independently, it was a very clever way to make it pond, because up until that point, we never got pond and river being bodies of water. And it was like, oh, Moffat, you didn't plan that, but it came through in the end.
And I guess my main issue with this episode is to compare it to Falling Down, the movie with Michael Douglas. There's a moment in that movie where he's like, oh, I'm the bad guy? There was no real revelation of the Doctor that, oh, I did this. And I felt that I needed that.
Also, the thing that gets me about it is River shows him the crib and he reads it. Doesn't say what it is, but as a viewer, it's like, okay, that's important. And he suddenly gets all happy and giddy. And, and it's like,
and then he leaves.
Yeah, it's like, well, we need that explained. It was too much of an emotional shift without an explanation. It's like Josh says, they were like expecting the audience to know too much.
My issue with that is that you have Amy and Rory like wondering where's their baby. The Doctor has the answer, but he doesn't tell them.
That's the real issue. If somebody didn't tell me where my dang baby is.
Exactly.
Oh, hell no.
Exactly.
If he did tell her in that moment, I wouldn't have cried 10 minutes later.
Oh, totally.
But that's not an excuse.
That would have been
But
good.
even then also, though, his running off in the TARDIS never gets paid off. He runs off in the TARDIS, so you think the next episode he's going to be running around in the TARDIS. And they're like sitting there going, have you done anything yet?
Exactly.
So why did he have to run off? Make that point worth it.
Did the Doctor read the crib? Because that was his baby crib. Or did he read the leaf inside?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think he read the crib.
But the crib is his crib. So it's not going to say, this is, Melody Pond's crib.
Unless if that was his name on Gallifrey, we don't know. And this ending moment where the Doctor smiles and leaves Amy and Rory wondering is another reason why I feel like this is the loss of our hero, and why I don't like it being drawn out for a season. Like in the Day of the Moon, the Doctor is withholding information that Amy is pregnant or not pregnant. And then here, he can tell them why or where their baby is or what's going to happen with their baby, but he doesn't. And these are things that I feel like I wouldn't do this to my friends.
Right.
4 of us listed it as fan, and 2 of us listed it as Die Hard.
Oh, what did I do?
Die Hard.
I did Die Hard?
So did I. Drew really, really liked this episode, but I would never, ever have somebody watch it unless they knew what was coming.
We had a lot to discuss and talk about in season 6. Stay tuned for the latter half of this episode. Stay safe, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
And we have additional music by Damiel Paggio.
All our episodes are engineered by Auburn.
You can find him at auburnbinkley.com.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
Visit our Facebook page,
Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to help support Who Knew Podcast.
To listen to our show on your Amazon Echo device, enable the AnyPod podcast skill. Ask AnyPod to play the Who Knew Podcast.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who.
The longest running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival, spearheaded by Russell T. Davis,
Thanks to Russell,
Sydney Newman,
Verity Lambert,
Ron Grainer,
Delia Derbyshire.
And all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
your work continues to inspire and entertain.
I just wanted to say before we continue, Josh, you look like you're on a Turner Classic Movie review.
Thank you for joining me tonight.
Yes.
our
Nicely
feature,
done.
the Iron Giant.
Tonight's double feature is Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast.
An Iron Giant.
Wednesday for our midnight show, we were saying Iron Giant, and then in the AM hours, South Pacific.
You need a smoking jacket.
Right, or a pipe.
And you're like, oh, hello, I didn't see you there.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.